I'm 65 years old, and if you told me 5 years ago that getting remarried would nearly cost me everything I'd spent 3 decades building, I would have laughed you out of my tasting room. But that's precisely what happened, and the only reason I still have my vineyard, my winery, and my freedom today is because when I married Victor Ashford, I made one critical decision. I never told him or his 3 adult children that the estate we lived on wasn't just family property. It was mine. All mine. Every acre, every vine, every bottle. Let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Diana Sterling, though everyone calls me Dee. I bought my first 5 acres in the Santa Lucia Highlands in 1988 when I was 33 years old. I was a single mother working as a real estate agent, and people thought I was absolutely mad, a woman on her own buying raw land in wine country. The bank manager nearly laughed me out of his office. But I had a vision, and more importantly, I had grit. I started small, planted my first Pinot Noir vines with my own callous hands. My daughter Claire was 6, and she'd help me after school, her tiny fingers learning to tie the vines to the posts as the sun set over the rolling hills. It took 3 years before those vines produced anything worth pressing. 3 years of working my real estate job during the day and working the land every evening and weekend. 3 years of locals in town taking bets on when I'd finally give up and sell. But I didn't give up. By 1994, I had 15 acres planted, and my first vintage bottled. By 1999, I'd expanded to 50 acres and opened a small tasting room. By 2009, Sterling Vineyards was on the map. 75 acres of prime Santa Lucia Highlands terroir, a beautiful stone winery building, a tasting room that seated 40, and wines that were getting written up in Wine Spectator. Do you know what it takes for a single woman to build something like that? The 16-hour days, the bank loans I had to personally guarantee with my own house as collateral. The harvest seasons when I was out there at 2 in the morning with a flashlight, checking on the crush in the cold fog. The late payments I juggled to keep the lights on, the distributors who wouldn't return my calls because they thought a woman's wine couldn't sell. Every single decision, every risk, every victory that was me, mine. By the time I was 59, Claire had graduated from UC Davis with a degree in viticulture and was working at a prestigious winery in Napa. She didn't want to take over the family business. She wanted to make her own path, and I respected that completely. My estate had grown to 150 acres. The property was worth at least $9 million, probably more. I wasn't wealthy, but I was comfortable, secure, proud of what I'd built, and I was lonely. My first husband, Claire's father, had left when she was just a toddler. I dated here and there over the years, but nothing serious. I'd been too busy building my dream to focus on romance. But at 59, with Claire living her own life and the business running smoothly with the help of my incredible vineyard manager Marco, I found myself rattling around in my farmhouse alone, listening to the coyotes howl at night and wondering if I'd built this beautiful life only to live it by myself. That's when I met Victor at a charity wine auction in Carmel. He was 66, a retired investment banker, recently widowed, tall and silver-haired, charming in that polished way that comes from decades of expensive suits and country club memberships. He bid on a case of my 2014 Reserve Pinot, and when he won, he came up to introduce himself with that confident smile. "I've heard wonderful things about Sterling Vineyards," he said, shaking my hand with just the right amount of pressure. "I'd love to visit your tasting room sometime." He visited the following weekend, then the weekend after that. By the third visit, we were having dinner together at that little bistro in Paso Robles. By the 6th month, we were talking about the future in hushed tones over glasses of my own wine on the porch. Victor was attentive, thoughtful. He brought me first editions of books about winemaking. He planned romantic getaways to Mendocino and Big Sur. He listened when I talked about the challenges of running a winery in an industry still dominated by men. He seemed genuinely fascinated by my success story. Looking back now, with the clarity of hindsight and the scars of betrayal, I can see exactly what I missed. The way his eyes would dart around when I talked about the business finances, the subtle questions about property values, the too eager interest in my family's holdings. But at the time, I was just a 59-year-old woman who'd been alone for most of her adult life, falling in love and letting myself believe in second chances. We got engaged after 8 months. He proposed at sunset on my West Vineyard, the one with the breathtaking view of the valley, with a ring that must have cost $20,000. I said yes with tears in my eyes, believing I'd found someone to share this beautiful life I'd built. That's when the questions started. Not from Victor at first, but from his children. He had 3 of them. Nathan, 41, who worked in finance like his father. Rebecca, 38, a real estate developer with that sharp, assessing gaze. And Tyler, 34, who did something vague in tech consulting. That involved a lot of streamlining and optimization. They all lived in the Bay Area, and Victor was close with them in a way that should have been a red flag but felt sweet at the time. The first time they came to visit the estate, 2 weeks after the engagement, Rebecca walked through my farmhouse like she was conducting an appraisal, running her perfectly manicured fingers over the reclaimed wood beams. "How many acres is this property?" she asked, her voice casual but her eyes calculating. "What's the annual production? Who handles distribution? Do you have any business partners or investors?" I kept my answers deliberately vague. "It's a family operation," I said with a practiced smile. "Everything's been in the Sterling name for over 30 years. Nathan wanted to know about financials. "What kind of revenue does a boutique winery like this generate? What are your margins? How's the debt structured? Are you leveraged?" I smiled politely, feeling that first prickle of unease. "We do well enough. It's not really about the money for me. It's about the craft." Tyler asked about my will. "Since you and Dad are getting married, have you thought about estate planning? It would be smart to get everything organized, for tax purposes. For the family." I was 60 years old, healthy as a horse, sharp as a tack. I looked at Victor, waiting for him to tell his son that was wildly inappropriate, but Victor just squeezed my hand and said, "Tyler's right, darling. We should both make sure our affairs are in order. It's the responsible thing to do." Claire flew up from Napa for the wedding. The night before, as we were having wine on the porch of the farmhouse, she said, "Mom, are you sure about this? Those kids of his give me a weird vibe. They're just protective of their father," I told her. "He's all they have left since their mother died." "Yeah, but the way Rebecca was looking at the winery building, the tasting room, the barrels," Claire paused, choosing her words carefully. "Mom," she was assessing value. "I know that look. I see it from developers all the time." I waved her off. "You're being paranoid, honey. It's fine. Did you get a prenup?" Claire asked, her voice serious. "Mom, please tell me you got a prenup." I had. My attorney, Rachel Kim, who I'd known since my real estate days, had absolutely insisted. Victor had seemed a little wounded when I brought it up, had given me that puppy dog look, but he'd signed without too much fuss. The prenup was crystal clear. Assets acquired before the marriage remained separate property. The estate, the winery, the business, all mine, protected, safe. What I didn't tell anyone, not Claire, not Rachel, not even Victor, was what I did tell Victor and his children about the property. I lied. Not a big lie, not a dramatic lie, just a strategic omission wrapped in vagueness. I told them the estate was cooperative family property that had been in the Sterling name for generations. I implied there were other stakeholders, distant cousins, family trusts, silent partners. I made it sound like I was the manager, the operator, the face of the business, but not the sole owner. When they asked direct questions, I deflected with practiced ease. "It's complicated," I'd say with a knowing look. "There are family trusts involved. My attorney handles all of that. It's not really my place to discuss the details." Was it dishonest? Perhaps, but something in my gut, some primal instinct I developed over 30 years of fighting to build and keep my business, told me to protect this information. Some part of me understood that Victor's children seeing me as a wealthy widow with millions in real estate assets might not be a good thing. And oh, was I right? The wedding was small, intimate. We got married at the estate, of course, under an arch covered in grapevines and white roses. Claire was my maid of honor. Victor's 3 children stood as his attendants, all smiles and congratulations. Rebecca even hugged me and called me mom, which should have been sweet but felt somehow performative, like she was trying on a role. We didn't go on a honeymoon. Harvest season was approaching, and I couldn't leave Marco to handle it alone. Victor said he understood, but I saw the flicker of annoyance he quickly hid. He moved into the farmhouse, bringing his leather furniture, his golf clubs, his collection of expensive watches. We settled into married life. For the first year, it was good. Victor seemed content to play golf at the club in Paso Robles, to host his children for Sunday dinners, to sit on the porch in the evenings with a glass of my wine and watch the sunset over the vines. He didn't interfere with the business. He didn't ask too many questions. He was just there, companionable, present. And I told myself that was enough, but in year 2, things shifted. It started with Nathan. He came to visit alone one Saturday, claiming he was in the area for business. He asked if he could take a look at the books for the winery, just from a financial planning perspective, Mom, he said, and that word mom felt wrong coming from his mouth. Dad mentioned you might want to expand distribution, and I have some connections in that world. I'd never mentioned wanting to expand distribution. Thanks, Nathan, but Marco and I have the business side handled. We're happy with our current distributors. His smile didn't reach his eyes. You know, Dee, you're family now. We want to help. That's what families do. Then Rebecca started showing up with real estate agents just to get the property appraised. She said it was for insurance purposes. You're probably underinsured, and with climate change affecting California, fire insurance is crucial. I have a friend who's an excellent appraiser. He could come out Tuesday. I already had excellent insurance. I told her so. But have you had the land appraised recently? I'm seeing comparable properties in the Highlands going for 12, even 15 million. You should know what you're sitting on. I asked her to leave and not bring strangers onto my property again. Tyler was subtler. He'd come over for dinner and casually mention how his tech consulting was going. Then he'd say things like, you know, a lot of wineries are moving into e-commerce and direct-to-consumer sales. I could help you build out a platform. Family discount. Of course, I could really optimize your revenue streams. I already had a website. I already did direct sales. I didn't need his optimization, but the most disturbing thing was Victor. He started asking me to sign things, just updating my life insurance beneficiaries, he'd say, sliding a form across the kitchen table with his charming smile. Standard stuff for married couples. I'd read every word. Half the time, the documents had nothing to do with his life insurance. They were financial powers of attorney, property transfer authorizations, papers that would give him legal authority over my accounts and business decisions. Victor, I'm not signing this, I said more than once, pushing the papers back across the table. Why not? Don't you trust me? We're married, Diana. We share everything now. It's not about trust. I'm just not signing documents I don't fully understand. He'd get cold then, distant, wouldn't speak to me for days. The silent treatment would last until I finally apologized, until I made it right. And then came the phone calls. I started noticing. He'd take calls outside, walking down between the vine rows where I couldn't hear, his voice low and urgent. When I asked who it was, he'd say, just Nathan, or just Rebecca, or nobody important. 3 years into the marriage, I came home from a meeting with my distributor in San Francisco to find Victor, Nathan, and Rebecca in my office in the winery building. They had my filing cabinet open. They had papers spread across my desk. My heart dropped into my stomach. What are you doing? I asked, my voice sharp and high in the quiet room. They all jumped like they'd been caught stealing. Rebecca quickly started gathering papers. Nathan closed the filing cabinet drawer. Victor smiled that smooth, practiced smile. We were just looking for the insurance papers, darling, he said, his voice too casual. Rebecca was right. We really should update your policy. Those are private business documents. You had no right to be in here. Diana, I'm your husband. We don't have secrets in a marriage. That night, I called Rachel. I think something's wrong, I told her, my voice shaking. Despite my best efforts to stay calm, I need you to run a property check on my estate. Make sure everything's still in my name. All the filings are correct. Dee, what's going on? Rachel asked, immediately concerned. I don't know, but I have a bad feeling. She called me back 3 days later. Her voice was tight, controlled, angry. Diana, someone's been filing documents with the county. Transfer deeds, partnership agreements, papers that would give Victor and his children ownership stakes in Sterling Vineyards. My blood went cold. I felt like I might pass out. What? How is that possible? I never signed anything like that. The signatures look like yours. But Diana, these are forgeries. Obvious forgeries once you compare them to your actual signature. Whoever did this wasn't even good at it. They got sloppy. Can they do that? Can they just file fake documents? They can file them. Whether they hold up in court is another matter entirely. But Diana, this is serious. This is fraud. This is a crime. You need to come in so we can file a police report. Today, I felt sick. I sat down on the porch steps, the phone pressed to my ear, looking out at the vines I'd planted with my own hands. 30 years ago, my life's work, my everything. What do? I whispered. We protect you. We file a police report. We get an injunction. And Dee, you need to confront Victor, but you need to do it carefully, with all the evidence. But I didn't confront Victor. Not yet, because I did something else first. I called an old friend of mine, a private investigator named Jack Donovan, who I'd worked with back in my real estate days when I needed background checks on potential buyers. Jack, I need you to look into someone for me. Victor Ashford. Everything. Financial history, criminal record, property holdings. And especially, I need you to find out about his first wife, how she died, what happened to her estate. It took Jack 2 weeks. When he came back, he had a file 3 inches thick. Victor's first wife, Eleanor, had died 4 years ago. But before she died, she transferred her entire estate, a $4 million home in Beverly Hills, her investment accounts, her art collection, everything into Victor's name. The transfer had happened 6 months before her death. She'd had early onset Alzheimer's, and here's where it got really dark. Eleanor's sister had tried to contest the transfer, claiming Victor had taken advantage of Eleanor's diminished mental capacity. But Victor had documents, power of attorney, transfer papers, all signed by Eleanor. Though the sister claimed they were forgeries or had been signed when Eleanor didn't understand what she was signing, the case had been settled out of court. The sister got a small payout. Victor kept everything. There was more. Nathan had been sued by a former business partner for financial fraud. Rebecca had lost her real estate license in Oregon over ethical violations. Tyler had been fired from 2 consulting firms for undisclosed reasons. Jack looked at me across the table at the coffee shop where we met, his expression grave. Dee, this is a family of grifters. They've done this before. They're doing it again. With you. This is their pattern. I felt like I couldn't breathe. What do? You get out. You divorce him. You press charges for the forgery. You protect yourself and your assets. But here's the thing. I'd spent 30 years building Sterling Vineyards. These people thought they could just walk in and take it, forge some papers, manipulate me, and steal what I'd spent 3 decades creating. No, I wasn't just going to protect myself. I was going to make sure they could never do this to anyone else again. I want to build a case. A real case, not just for divorce, for fraud, for attempted theft, for forgery, for criminal conspiracy. I want criminal charges. All of them. Rachel looked at me carefully, concern etched on her face. That's going to be ugly. That's going to be public. Your winery's reputation, my winery's reputation is built on the quality of my wine and the integrity of my name, I said, my voice hardening with resolve. These people tried to steal from me. I want everyone to know it. I want them exposed. We built the case methodically, piece by piece. Rachel brought in a forensic accountant who went through every financial record, every filing, every document with a fine-tooth comb. We found more forged signatures on bank documents, on insurance forms, on partnership agreements that didn't exist. We found email chains between Nathan and Rebecca discussing how to maximize value extraction from the estate. We found text messages from Victor to his children strategizing about how to handle me, how to soften me up for the transfers. We also found something else. Victor had done this not just to his first wife, Eleanor, but to his second wife before Eleanor, a woman named Grace, who died in a fall at her vacation home in Lake Tahoe. She'd also transferred her property to Victor shortly before her death. Her adult children had tried to contest it, but had been blocked by the same high-priced attorneys Victor used for Eleanor's case. The pattern was undeniable. 2 dead wives, 2 estates transferred right before they died, and now a third wife, me, who they were trying to get property from through forgery and fraud. I wasn't dying. I wasn't sick. I was healthy and sharp and 64 years old. But if I'd been just a little more trusting, a little less careful, a little more eager for companionship, who knows what might have happened? Who knows how far they would have gone? Rachel filed all the documents with the district attorney. We had enough for criminal fraud charges against Nathan and Rebecca. For Victor, we were building a case for elder abuse, financial fraud, conspiracy, and possibly more. But before any of that went public, before the arrests and the headlines, I wanted my confrontation. I needed to look them in the eye and let them know they'd been caught. I planned it carefully, like a military operation. I told Victor I wanted to have a family dinner, all of his children, Claire and a few close friends, to celebrate our 3-year anniversary. He was thrilled. He thought I'd finally come around to being a real family. He thought he'd won. The dinner was set for a Saturday evening at the estate. I had Marco set up tables on the patio overlooking the vines, string lights, creating a magical atmosphere. I hired a caterer from Carmel to prepare an elegant meal. I made sure my best wines were decanted and breathing: my 2016 Reserve Pinot, my 2018 Chardonnay, my rare 2012 Estate Blend. Victor, Nathan, Rebecca, and Tyler arrived dressed in their best, all smiles and congratulations. Claire arrived with her boyfriend, giving me a questioning look. I'd briefed her earlier, and she was barely holding it together, her knuckles white as she gripped her wine glass, and then my other guests arrived. Rachel Kim, my attorney, Jack Donovan, my private investigator, Detective Lisa Chen from the Monterey County Sheriff's Office, and 2 more people Victor definitely wasn't expecting: Eleanor's sister Susan and Grace's daughter Olivia. Victor's face went white when he saw them walk onto the patio. His smile faltered, then crumbled completely. "What is this?" he asked, his voice tight with panic. "This is a family dinner," I said calmly, my voice carrying across the patio. "And these people, they're family too. Susan is your late wife, Eleanor's sister. Olivia is your late wife, Grace's daughter. I thought it was time we all got to know each other, compare notes, so to speak." Nathan stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. We're leaving." "Sit down, Nathan," Detective Chen said, her hand moving to rest on her badge. "You're not going anywhere." Rebecca looked like she was going to be sick. She reached for her water glass with a trembling hand. I stood at the head of the table, a glass of my best wine in my hand, looking at each of them in turn. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" I asked, my voice deceptively calm. "Did you honestly believe you could forge documents, file fake transfer papers, and I wouldn't notice? That my attorney wouldn't notice? Victor tried to bluster, his politician's smile returning. Diana, I don't know what these people have told you, but they haven't told me anything, I interrupted. I have the documents, the forged signatures, the email chains, the texts. I think you and your children are thieves. I think you've done this before. Twice, I turned to Susan. Tell them what you told me. Susan stood, her voice shaking with years of suppressed anger. He forged my sister's signature. I've been saying it for years. Eleanor would never have signed away everything. She wasn't capable of understanding those papers in her condition. Olivia stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. My mother was terrified of him at the end. She told me she didn't want to sign anything, but he kept bringing papers to the hospital, pressuring her. She changed her will a week before she died. It wasn't her. I looked at Victor, at Nathan, at Rebecca, at Tyler. You thought I was just another elderly woman you could rob. Another easy mark. But here's what you didn't know. I built this estate from nothing. I fought banks, droughts, fires, recessions, and an entire industry that didn't want women at the table. Do you really think I wouldn't fight you? Rachel stepped forward with a thick folder. These are the forged documents you filed with the county. We've had them analyzed by 3 different forensic experts. The signatures are fake. We have evidence of your email chains discussing the fraud, and we have sworn statements from your father's previous victims. Detective Chen added, Victor Ashford, Nathan Ashford, Rebecca Ashford. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit theft, and elder abuse. The next hour was pure chaos. Miranda rights being read, handcuffs clicking shut, Tyler claiming he didn't know anything about it, throwing his siblings under the bus, Rebecca crying hysterically, her mascara running down her face, Nathan threatening lawsuits, his face purple with rage, Victor silent, staring at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. As they were being loaded into the waiting police cars, Victor finally spoke, his voice low and venomous. You vindictive bitch. I loved you. I walked right up to him, close enough that only he could hear me, my voice a whisper of steel. No, you didn't. You loved my property. But here's the thing, Victor. It was never yours to love. Every vine, every bottle, every acre, I bought it. I built it. I earned it. And you couldn't take it from me because I knew exactly what I had. And I protected it. They were taken away. The criminal case took 8 months. Nathan and Rebecca pleaded guilty to fraud and forgery in exchange for reduced sentences. They each got to years in state prison. Victor went to trial and was convicted of elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy, and after further investigation into Eleanor and Grace's deaths, 2 counts of suspicious circumstances that triggered new investigations. He got 12 years at 67, essentially a life sentence. The divorce was finalized 3 months after the arrests. The prenup held. Victor got nothing. His legal fees bankrupted him. Tyler, who cooperated with prosecutors, got probation and immunity in exchange for testifying against his father and siblings. Today, I'm 65 years old. Sterling Vineyards is thriving. Claire decided to come back and work with me. Turns out watching her mother fight for what was hers inspired her to want to be part of the legacy. Marco is still my vineyard manager, and he just celebrated 20 years with me. I never remarried. I don't think I will, but I tell this story to anyone who will listen, especially women, especially older women, especially women who've built something with their own hands. When I got married at 60, I made a choice not to tell my husband or his children that the estate we lived on was solely mine. I made them believe it was family property or cooperative ownership or something vague and complicated. Some people might say I should have trusted Victor, that if I didn't trust him, I shouldn't have married him. But here's what I learned. Protecting yourself isn't about distrust. It's about recognizing that the person you love today might not be the person you thought they were tomorrow. It's about understanding that your achievements, your property, your life's work, those things are yours. They don't become community property because you fall in love. They don't become negotiable because you want companionship. And sometimes the simple act of keeping a secret, of not revealing your full hand, is what saves everything you've worked for. I kept my secret for 3 years. Those 3 years gave me time to see who Victor and his children really were. Time to notice the red flags, time to build evidence, time to protect myself. If I'd told them from day one that I was the sole owner of a $9 million estate, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe they would have pushed harder, faster. Maybe I wouldn't have noticed the manipulation until it was too late. Maybe I'd be like Eleanor and Grace, stripped of everything I'd built, a cautionary tale instead of a survivor, but I didn't tell them. And that secret saved me. My advice to anyone entering a late-life marriage, or any marriage: really know what you have, know what it's worth, protect it legally, and don't feel guilty about keeping some cards close to your chest until you're absolutely certain of who you're dealing with. Because love is beautiful, but naivety is dangerous. And your life's work, that's not something you gamble with. Not ever. I still make wine. I still walk my vineyard rows at sunset, touching the vines I planted 30 years ago with these same hands. I still taste every vintage, still make every blending decision, still welcome guests to my tasting room with pride. The difference is now, when I pour someone a glass of Sterling Vineyard's Reserve, when they ask me about the property, I tell them the truth. This is my estate. I bought it. I built it. I own it. Every vine you see is mine. Every bottle is mine. Every acre is mine. And then I smile and add, and it's going to stay that way, because I was never their victim. I was never their mark. I was never their elderly target. I was their reckoning. And I'm still here, on my land, living my life, making my wine, exactly as I always have been. Alone, perhaps, but free, absolutely. And that's worth more than any marriage built on lies.